Hey, here we are again. It's your lousy Florida gardener here. I want to talk with you today about bird feeding. Bird watching and bird feeding is something that doesn't just apply to us people who like to garden. It's also something that a lot of other people get into. A lot of the people I talk to, they'll go off on a vacation camping or maybe to a botanical garden somewhere just to get out of the house, and they in tune with nature. They come home and they're excited. They're ready to set up some bird feeding. So they run on down to the Tractor Supply or the Walmart or the local Do It Best or Ace Hardware. They buy up some bird feeders and some bird feed, go home and hang it up. Now out of that comes two types of people. People who watch it a little bit and then they kind of lose interest in the bird feeders, hang in the yard, and that's the end of it. And then there's the ones that really get entwiced to it and they like it. They spend, usually those are the type of people who like to hang out in their yard, which is why there are more gardeners who are bird watchers than not. That's kind of the reason for that. So when you reach that level of bird watching, now you want to start attracting other birds. So I thought I'd just give you a few tips today on how to set up some bird feeders. A couple things you want to take into account. Number one, what type of birds are you wanting to watch? As you get into it, you're going to start wanting to see some other birds that you know are in your area. So do some research on them and see what they eat. Bird seed plays a big role in that. There's all different types. This is a fruit blend here. They make some cheaper ones. I tend to stay away from corn because I have two problems with that: squirrels and deer. You think that's a good problem, but them squirrels will overtake and your birds won't have nothing. I pretty much don't have much of that problem anymore. Most of my feeders I've done, which we'll go over here in a little bit for general feeder setup, but are out in the open. Squirrel ain't got a chance on the ground with my cats. Deer, there's just nothing you can really do about them. So because of that, I tend to feed my feeders about half full. And we get a lot of rain here in North Florida. So a couple tips. Once you figure out what your bird that you're trying to attract eats, some of those have different type feeders that you have to feed that out of, like thistle comes out of a thistle stalk. Fruit, I got a peach here. We got a peach tree and some plum trees. We use the fruit that falls on the ground to give to the different birds, orioles, things like that. But for general, most of these hanging type feeders will work for what you want. As I mentioned, I generally here in North Florida, we get a lot of bad weather, a lot of storms. I have a deer problem. I generally tend to fill them about half full. Location, let's talk about location. We'll go over here and I'll show you a couple locations. Location plays a large factor in whether birds will come to your feeder or not. They need to feel safe. They like to be able to see their surroundings so nothing can creep up on them. Most birds in general. And they also want something that's close enough, if something comes after them, they can get into and hide and get away. So you notice I have this one. I usually hang one feeder on this. It's a wide open area around it. They have some stuff behind it. They have a couple trees that they can get into. There's a camellia tree over there. There's a flagpole. There's an oak tree. So it's out where they can see around them. This is a very successful feeder. I see cardinals on this feeder. I see ground doves underneath this feeder. I mean, I've seen a couple blue jays on this feeder, lots of wrens, finches. So this is a good location. If you choose your location, you set it up, give it some time. They're not going to immediately flock to it. But after a month or two, if they ain't on it and you ain't seeing them like you want them, move them. Buy you a game camera, set it up on it where it can be set up for motion and video. You can tell what's coming to your feeder even when you're not there. I'm gonna move over here and show you another location. Same philosophy here. I have this one set up in the center. It's open around it. I've got a basket around my fruit cage. There's a small pine right here. Wooden structure here behind me. There's a fig tree over here. So he can eat, he can see around him. This is a very successful location. So, I mean, this is what you want to keep in mind. You got to keep in mind the bird safety. I have cats, so that's a big factor for me, because if cats are catching your birds will quit coming. If you'll notice in most of the videos I do outdoor, you can hear the animals and the birds all around me. So they are successful feeders. So keep that in mind and do a little research on your birds. Read the back of your bags that you get and make sure that what you're getting in there is for what you want. And if you're serious about birding, buy some different type feeds. Now, one tip I do have for you on storing your feed, something I've seen a lot of problems over the years, and I've been around it even when I worked. People tend here in Florida to store their feed, bird seed especially, in a metal or plastic can right out in the yard. If you do that, you need to be sure that that can don't get in the sun at all during the day, period. Because if not, it don't matter if it's metal or plastic, with the humidity here in Florida, that can sweat, and that bird seed tends to get moldy, and even before it starts clumping, there's mold already forming on it that you don't realize that you're feeding to your birds. So that, unless you can keep that can in the shade all day long, don't keep it outside in a can. Try to keep it somewhere in the house. Don't put it in a shop where you expose a lot of chemicals and gas fumes to. That seeps into the bird seed. So find somewhere in your house to keep your can out of the way. I personally keep my bird seed in the back of my SUV. It's out of the way, it's dry. I plan on later on building an enclosed little shed. I'll put some in there then. If you feed fruit, feed that on a platform stand. I suggest you put those away from those other feeders. Most birds that eat fruit like a little different environment. So I hope this has helped you maybe to choose you some feeders. These basic hanging type feeders will get you started, and maybe to be able to do some research once you get into birding and you want to see some other type birds to figure out what to put out for your type of birds. You heard me speak against corn earlier. Corn is a great product. A lot of birds eat corn, but if you have deer problems or squirrels become a takeover, you're gonna have to eliminate that. Squirrels are gonna be a problem regardless if you got squirrels, unless you got cats. As a bonus tip for those of you that hung in there, when your bird feeders do get wet, don't throw that wet seed away. Dump it into a bucket, pick you out a spot somewhere over on the edge of your yard, section you out of place. Break that ground up and you can scatter that seed there, and it'll grow what's in that bird seed. You'll be surprised what'll come up and grow, and the butterflies and birds are a little attracted to that. So you can reuse your seed and it's not a waste, but I'd suggest you do it over in an out of the way place, because it's gonna look like a wildfire patch. And the second tip, all of you that really get seriously into birds, one of the things you want to do after that, you start trying to identify a bird. Something that'll help you in that and also help you in setting up your habitat for that, a book called the Sibley's Book of Birds. There's a couple different volumes. I'll try to remember to post some links down bottom to the current volume. These are really good books. He has probably the largest selection of birds, both yard birds, coastal birds, shore birds. And not only that, it tells you about the habitat and the description. It gives you good pictures of what they look like in their juvenile and on up through stages with some information. So really awesome book. So if you're really into birds and you want to check that out, I will post that link in the bottom. So I appreciate y'all joining me, get them bird feeders set up. Let me know how you're doing with them. Thank y'all for watching.